right, welcome. I know it's been a while. I'm sorry about that. This is the I Shoulda Did More Reading podcast. I shoulda did more reading. Jay is out today. He is on vacation. He's on the road. I might get a hold of him, but I know that we have been remiss, and it's been a few weeks here since we've done a podcast, but I will get better. We've kind of retooled a little bit. We're going to try to crank a couple out per week, and maybe a few per week. Whether or not I'm fired, we'll decide that. Or actually just when I'm fired, we'll decide that. So you can follow me on Twitter at I Shoulda Did More Reading. I think that's our Twitter handle. You can find it all. Just go to IShouldaDidMoreReading.com. IShouldaDidMoreReading.com. And get us on iTunes and YouTube. Subscribe to us on YouTube and then on iTunes, and then we'll leave you alone. You don't even have to listen to this drivel. We just need subscribers because there's almost nobody. But today is a special show because we're at the studios not to be named right now doing this interview, and I'm interviewing my first celebrity, John Sapochetti. In my world of this podcast, you are a big celebrity.
Who else have you had? If I'm a celebrity, I mean, did you talk to...
Our dog walker?
Okay, I think that's a celebrity.
You
have a dog walker? You have one dog?
No, we used to have a dog walker. She used to put the dog on the phone with me. She was eccentric, to say the least.
I would say so, yeah. If you're walking a dog for pay, you're eccentric.
Yeah, that was I was, they make tons of money. Dog walkers make hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Crazy.
Under the table.
I walked the dog once because when I was with roommates, we had a dog, and the dog couldn't stand me, and I wasn't crazy about him. I took him for a walk, and I just let the leash go, and he just, ran away.
Sap.
And a couple hours later, he came back. Today, that would have been big news. I probably would have to go to sensitivity training. Everybody would have been down on me.
That is just, there's a few pillars of, actions that you're not supposed to do while walking the dog, and to have him roam free. My brother's been teaching my my son how to fly a kite, and he just tells him the one rule is to never let go of the kite.
Yeah.
I think the dog walking...
That's probably the first thing you're supposed to do is not let go of the dog. But I did. This was back in my drinking days. It was probably 1991, so I was 27 at the time, right in my partying mode, and they said, it's your turn to walk the dog, and I showed them. But the dog did come back. He never liked me.
What kind of dog?
It was a golden retriever mixed. Bud was his name. Just never liked me. One time I came home from work. He'd gotten into my bedroom, and he...
Oh, so this is your own family
all over the place.
Oh, my God.
There were two other roommates.
Yeah.
Bill and me. It was quite a trio we had. There was a three's company. And, the dog just never warmed up to me. I used to drink a lot, and I'd yell at him. And then one time... I came home from a night of drinking, had a bag of Chinese food in my hand.
Oh, no.
And I got about 10 stairs up. We were on the third floor, get 10 stairs up, fall backwards. Mm-hmm. But I held on to that Chinese food, but I gashed my knee. Yeah. My neck was, sore. It looked like I was in a car accident. I get up to the apartment, and Bud's looking for Chinese food because I'm eating Chinese food because that's what dogs do. And I yelled at him. Well, 2 days later, I came home from work, and he got into my room, and it was just poop city.
Jesus, that's terrible.
Yeah, and so I had to put a lock up so Bud wouldn't get back in there. And like a week later, they're like, "Can you walk him?" I'm like, "Sure."
There is a brotherhood of late night Chinese food.
Yes,
when drunk. Certainly.
Oh, it's the best.
Yeah,
that or sausage with peppers and onions.
The next morning, it is really salty and things.
Yeah, well, I'd wake up with a hangover the next morning and never blame the 31 Coors Lights that I had, but I'd blame the number 8 special at Red House in Union Square.
Well,
that was the issue.
Yeah, it is, but it's some of the blame. It does exacerbate.
Oh, of course.
But then again, I mean, especially in those days where I think probably in our early 20s, we probably had the same ritual, probably.
Oh, yes. Yes. Drink a lot, eat a lot.
Drink a lot. Exactly. And
drink more.
The evening culminates with a beautiful meal. Of
course.
You can't really eat well that much, or I couldn't anyway.
I was smart enough to know to eat beforehand. I mean, I just like to eat in general.
Well, you got a 30-pack to go through.
Yeah, you got to have something going in there. Actually, now they're saying 200 ounces of water could kill you. I mean, like a 30-pack is 360 ounces. Yeah. I mean, I'm surprised I made it through the decade of the 80s.
Can you imagine what living in modern America it does to your biology? Only 100 years ago, there were Sapochettis who were probably having a tough time surviving and making it over here. You could die of polio and this and that.
Right.
And now it's so good and so easy that we sit around drinking 30 beers at night.
Yeah, because we got some issues that
Right.
we're not sure what the issues are.
Because life is so good that we have complexes and insecurities, and now like your liver and pancreas is like, what the frig is going on here? What war are we fighting that we're taking all this stuff in?
This guy's trying to kill me. My grandparents came here. They able to make a nice life for my parents, et cetera. And, I think they bought a house, $11,000 cash back in like 1941. I've never been able to amass $11,000. Here we are like, 75 years later. But, they had much better work ethic than I had, and they were smarter with money. But, yeah, just it's amazing what we do to ourselves. It's been a while since I drank. It's over 25 years. But back to being the dog walker, Bud didn't have a chance with me. But he did come back. The police did find him. Because when I went home, they said, "Where's Bud?" I said, "He got away." I was panicking. Yeah, they're like, "How did he get away?" Because he was like,
how broken up were you about Bud getting away?
Not at all. He was about 11 or 12. He had like arthritic hips.
Yeah.
I mean, I could have caught him. That's how slow he was. But
you didn't.
No, I didn't. But he came back, and he was really pissed at me.
So we should tell people that you are a radio host right now for Boston Herald Radio. You do a podcast over at BU. Is that you doing?
Yes, WBLZ Sports, the Sap and Cat Show. Myself and Cat Cornett. It's on every Friday at 6 o'clock on WBLZ Sports. We record it, Friday mornings. It's sports, pop culture. Cat's a mom with a 1.5-year-old boy, so we talk about the fact that you're learning on the fly as a parent. I don't have any kids.
Yeah,
you have several kids, so I'm kind of like the one that you can bounce things off, and I have no answers.
Well, it's good. It's good too, because when you don't have, it does. as a parent, parents have this self-righteous thing about them, and so when somebody doesn't know anything about kids like you, but who probably tries to learn and tries to know some cursory thing, but you really can never know until you have them.
Right.
Is it allows the parent to feel superior just for a few minutes before they go back to cleaning up feces and things like that.
That's why it's fun to visit the kids. My niece has a 1.5-year-old daughter. She's adorable, dynamite, love to see her. But then after 2 or 3 hours, I can go home, and then
isn't that great?
Their responsibility is to her at that moment. But yeah, it's fun in that situation. Now, are you a helicopter parent?
No, Jesus.
No. I wouldn't think so.
No.
And I wouldn't be either. Well, I shouldn't say that. I'd probably be too much of a helicopter parent, so that's a good reason I don't have kids.
Well, you never know. First of all, I want people to know they can get you. What's your Twitter handle?
At JohnSap25, JOHNSAP, and the number 25.
And that's what they should do to follow what you're up to. And Sap is a veteran broadcaster.
Not an Army veteran or anything, just broadcasting, yes.
Right.
If I had to serve in the military, we would be in a difficult situation right now.
Yeah, no, that would be the end of time.
We'd be speaking another language here.
The country would sooner surrender,
yes,
probably, before it gets to you or me.
I'm Italian-American. We're lovers, not fighters.
So I want to go through your history a little bit. So you've been, are you a journeyman, Sap? Is that what we call you?
I would say a journeyman. I don't take that as an insult. I started very, very young. I was like 14, 15 years old. I decided to have a TV show at the local access station in Somerville, and it grew from there that I got hired at 16 to be the sports director at Warner Cable, and we had like 10 cities. It was pretty big. We had Somerville, Everett, Melrose, Malden, etc.
So what does a sports director for Warner Cable do?
Well, at that point, I had a weekly show on Monday nights. This
must have been like 83,
80... 79, actually. I was still in high school.
Okay.
So
this is when cable was just coming in. Most people didn't have it.
Right, and it was just coming in, and what we would do is every Monday night I had a sports show from 8 to 9. I'd always have great guests in, like Bob Ryan came in a ton of times, the great writer from the Boston Globe. Glenn Ordway was in, Bob Gamere, Joe Fitzgerald, who writes for the Boston Herald. I could go, John Dennis. They all came in, and I had them sit in with me. This was at Warner Cable, and we were in Davis Square in Somerville. So they would come there. I mean, this is how long ago it was. I used to have to send them a letter with directions. I mean, it was, obviously a little bit different. And we did that show. We'd have calls. I'd put together packages. I'd go to a Patriots game on a Sunday. This is back when you could put together a 5-minute package on the Sunday game and no one cared. Now you've got limitations.
So this show was on the local access channels of a bunch
10 cities. They
10 had cities. So this was like the bad quality.
No, it wasn't that bad, actually, because a ton of people I work with went on to really good careers in broadcasting, behind the scenes and in front of the camera.
Wow.
So it was, and then I started freelancing for ESPN, but that show was part of my job. I'd go to a Celtics game on a Wednesday and do a profile on whoever, and then we'd run it that next Monday. It was a good show. We had phone-in guests. We'd have phone-in callers, give away prizes. It was kind of like the first show that you kind of see on Comcast now, which, a 1 hour, 2 hour show where there's a lot of moving parts. And it grew. It was pretty popular. But again, we were in 10 cities. It wasn't just local origination station. It was a local origination station. It wasn't public
you were
access.
On the air.
I was on the air, yeah. And everybody,
how did you know how to do anything?
I just learned. By,
so how'd you get the job?
There was back in the day, you could go, if you lived in the city of Somerville, there was also a public access channel, Channel 3 at the time, and you could go do a show if you were a member of the community. The director, the program director, or whoever ran Channel 3 was a friend of the family. His name's North Callahan. He went on to become, an executive with NBC. He married a woman who her mother and my mother were essentially sisters. In fact, they had the shower at my house, the bridal shower. So I got into it because I always been somewhat of a ham, always a big sports enthusiast. I used to call radio talk shows when I was like 8 or 9.
Wow.
And just, give them my picks for that
Eddie,
Sunday.
Mark, and Jim.
Yeah, I mean, I would call the Sports Huddle, sure. Started listening to that when I was a kid. Just all the different, Glenn Ordway. Glenn Ordway was someone that I idolized as a kid.
Did he have a show back then? I know
he was on 1510, yeah. It was 1510, WITS.
Yeah.
Yeah, information, talk, and sports. And they carried the Bruins, Red Sox. Ordway did a night show. He had done afternoon shows. I mean, some of it is forgotten in the 35, 40 years, but I always loved Glenn Ordway. And I had him on my show. He drove in, and we sat there, and he talked with us for an hour. And then, going to Celtics games, I got friendly with him. And
so they had the Bulldog show or something. Wasn't that on that channel?
I believe so, yeah.
And they also had, who's the guy who runs the Jimmy Fund? Two guys from
Mike Andrews.
Yeah, Mike Andrews and somebody else had a show there.
Okay, yep. I remember that now. Yeah, you're going back almost 40 years ago, late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah. Mike Andrews and I wish I could remember.
Doug Griffin. I'm not sure if it was Doug Griffin.
Somebody will let us know.
Yeah.
Where were the studios?
Our studios?
No, WITS.
Oh, man, I think at one point they were right
next to Fenway.
Fenway, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you had all these people come in.
Had Marvin Hagler come in when he was a middleweight champion.
You must have been the king dangling around Somerville High.
Yeah, I mean, somewhat, but I was kind of always more concerned with work. I would just, as soon as the bell rang, I was on my way to work. But we also did a lot of play-by-play stuff. We'd do high school football, college football. We did BU.
What a dream.
Tufts. Yeah, it was great. This is what I wanted to do.
Were you getting paid for this?
Yeah.
What a job to have as a high school kid. Were you a good student?
Junior year, I kind of tailed off because I was so into this. And then that summer, my mother and father were like, you got to start thinking ahead besides this.
Yeah.
So I did pretty well my senior year.
What were your expectations for kids in your family? To go, your dad was in construction,
My
right?
dad was in construction. My mom was a homemaker, but she was during the war. She actually
How many kids?
War II. There's 5 of us. During World War II, she was making more money than my dad as a stitcher, because my grandmother came from Italy as a stitcher. My grandfather was a tailor. Like all the jobs that the Italians did when they came here, whether they were stonemasons or whatever it may be. So 3 of us graduated college, 2 didn't, but everybody's done pretty well for themselves.
So you went to Suffolk locally?
I went to Suffolk University 3 years after high school. I graduated high school in 81, and I was still so into work. And at that time, I started freelancing for ESPN. I'd go to Celtics games, get interviews after games. And
How'd that happen? This is ESPN was fairly new.
That was through Roger Twibell. Roger Twibell was a sports director at Channel 4, and he just took a liking into me, and he'd been into the show many times. And, just going to all the games, you start to create relationships with people. And Roger Twibell, this is when ESPN started, helped me with my play-by-play, showed me how to prepare for games, but then also put in a really good word for me because at the time he was starting to transition into ESPN, and they were just looking for stringers in the cities. This is back in 1981. They were only 2 years old. They Getty Oil owned them, but they weren't putting a ton of money into it yet because they weren't sure if it was going to work out. And we go to Celtics, Patriots games.
And so you must have been just, as a fan of sports, blown away by getting media passes,
all of a
credentials.
Sudden, I'm interviewing Larry Bird and Dr. J after games and baseball players and hockey players.
This is why you're going to college?
In between, actually. And I continued to do it once I went to college. Then I started going to Suffolk in 1984. And at that point, I was out of Warner Cable because I wanted to concentrate on school, but I was still freelancing for ESPN. Every Wednesday during the football season, me and the camera crew would go down to Foxborough, shoot B-roll, which you can't really do much of now, but you could do a lot more then.
Right.
And then Ray Berry was the head coach at the time, would just walk over and we'd have our camera set up and he'd give us 5 minutes one-on-one. Players would come over, the PR staff would bring players over. It's a lot different than it is now. I mean, there were not as many people covering the team and they weren't as popular.
They sucked too, right?
Well, 84, 85, they went to the Super Bowl.
So were you at the snowplow game?
Oh, yeah. Mark Henderson. Yep. Ron Meyer was the head coach. It was 0-0. He summoned out Mark Henderson, who was a
ex-con.
Ex-con, yeah. He was on a workers release program, and he plowed the area for John Smith to kick the field goal that was ultimately the game-winning field goal. Don Shula was the coach of the Dolphins. He was irate.
Right. Is that legal to do? Guess nobody had done it.
No one's done it before. No one did it before, and I don't think anyone's done it since. But, Ron Meyer certainly, wasn't afraid to push the envelope. He had been at SMU coaching college football, and they'd had some issues there, too. So,
did he really?
Just win, baby.
He's
just
perfect
win.
for up here.
Oh, he's Ron Meyer, who just passed away several months ago. He was a very engaging guy. I mean, I don't know how great a football coach he was, although, he kind of turned things around here pretty quickly. But he was one of those guys, he'd remember your name, because I was at practice a lot. I went to training camp. That's back when I was a huge Patriots fan. Of the 4 major teams in town, that was the team that I lived and died with. So going to Patriots games, going to Patriots practice, that was awesome. I mean, the 85 Super Bowl, when they played the Bears and got absolutely blitzed in that game, that was tough for me as a fan.
In this area, at this time, you're going to school.
Yep.
You've got a gig now for ESPN.
Yep, freelancing for ESPN.
Upstart.
Yep.
And socially, this is when you're killing a case of the 30 years.
Yeah. I started to really start pounding them down. Well, I was 21 in 1984, so now I'm legal. And even before that, I could drink at home. It was not a big deal.
Yeah.
But, this is 84, 85, 86 is where I really start.
Ramping it up.
Ramping it up, baby.
And so this is your routine.
My rebellious
No, but
stage.
your routine for the day is to,
Not till later. I mean, I still went to class. I still did my work. But then at night, I went on.
Right.
With friends and sometimes alone, which is kind of, sad but true.
Sad but true, but it's also awesome.
It sounds like a country and western song, doesn't it?
I understand that. And a lot of people say, people who aren't drinkers or haven't put their time in as drinkers don't understand that. But it's very comforting. You watch a classic movie, you get buzzed, you get emotional.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen 2001: A Space Odyssey probably 12 times, and I was hammered every single time.
Yeah.
I don't know if I liked the movie. If I wasn't hammered, it's one of my 5 or 6 favorite movies. I may have to watch it again sober to see if I really like it that much. But yeah, you'd watch classic movies. Then I always had the being the youngest, and my mom had passed away in 1987, and my dad moved to Florida. I had the basement, which was finished. Every Italian house has the finished basement, and it was the first bachelor pad. First, man cave. I had a big TV.
Oh, perfect.
And all my buddies would be over and, order Chinese food, pizza, play basketball after work, run home, watch games, run games, do whatever. And
you would play some basketball.
I love playing basketball. Yeah, we used to, play pickup games down the street. In fact, me and my best friend at the time, he was a huge Larry Bird fan. I was a Magic Johnson fan. I always have to be different than everybody. We had the Weapons sneakers, which Converse had. There were really these heavy sneakers that they came out with. He had the black ones, which were the Bird ones, and I actually had sneakers in 1986, 87 that were white with purple and gold. I mean, you wouldn't miss me walking down the street. But yeah, we used to play. I mean, I wasn't a real accomplished basketball player, but I was a guy that I always never looked to shoot much, loved to pass, and to just get involved like that. That's why I love Magic Johnson.
Were you quick?
I was quick enough. I mean, I wasn't as heavy as I am now, but just quick enough to. And I could use either hand. I'm ambidextrous. I learned to shoot layups left-handed in addition to right-handed because where I started playing basketball, they had a backboard in someone's backyard, and you really couldn't drive to the right or you'd be hitting the garage.
Right.
So I learned to take shots left-handed. It was okay. The sport that I really loved playing the most was tennis.
Yeah,
I started taking lessons.
Great sport.
And football, I never really wanted to get into tackle because that's too much pain. But flag football, tag rush, I was good.
But were you kind of a jock?
I wouldn't say that. No, but I could.
But you exercised a few times.
I could hold my own.
Okay.
I wasn't. I'm coordinated, which makes up for lack of speed and height. And I'm 5'9". I'm not that short, but yeah, I mean, I'm coordinated.
Because there are people who, and I had in my 30s or right around 30. There are people who both play hard and work hard.
Right.
So what I'm saying is like there are people who are full-time jocks and then big boozers, and some smoke and some do, like just do everything.
Yeah, and then just at some point you probably collapse at some point because the body can only stand so much.
Well, I think about that, and I think your body's probably saying, like,
Slow
what
down.
are we exactly?
Yeah, I know.
What are we? Are we Belushi or are we like a jock here?
Exactly. Are we Gronkowski?
Right.
Gronkowski's the guy you think of.
Actually, he's both. Actually,
he's able to do both. And,
Yeah.
and again, I don't think he brings in the smoking, component or anything else. I think he likes to drink, although from what I understand, Gronkowski kind of really curbed it during the regular season, maybe during the off season. But the guy's at the gym at 5:30 in the morning. He's a freak. So
with any other vices?
No, just drinking and then gambling. I like to gamble.
Oh, okay.
I would bet on
but
sports.
as far as like drugs or alcohol,
no, never.
Weed or
hate the smell of marijuana. Yeah. Still to this day. In fact, I think on my walk over here today, I could smell marijuana. It just turns my stomach. I don't like the smell of it.
It's terrible.
Don't like the smell of cigarettes. Never had a cigarette in my life. Never did coke. But I certainly drank enough.
So going through your 20s, you've got a good gig with ESPN, and how did that come to an end?
Well, at that point, I decided to open up a sporting goods store with my brothers, and I kind of weaned off what I was doing for ESPN. And I was drinking real heavily then, and it didn't become a priority. The priority was, am I going to drink, or am I going to go to a Celtics game and work? And I kind of
couldn't do both.
We couldn't do both, and I wanted to drink. There were times. I mean, there were like in the finals one year. There was 87 against the Lakers. It was so cramped there. There were like 3 ESPN crews there. My responsibility was to go into the losers' locker room because everybody wants to go into the winners' locker room, so the stringer gets to go into the losers' locker room. So they didn't even have any seats for us. So I just got in there at halftime, and I had already had a couple of cocktails. Yeah, but you know how to hide it, and now I think back and go, what the hell was I doing? I mean, I had great opportunities, but I was more concerned with drinking with my buddies and betting on the game, and then you kind of lose focus of what you're there for.
Well, do you think that's the pull of alcohol, or is that the fact that was just more fun at the time?
It may have been more fun, and it's probably the pull too. Yeah, I mean, it's weird. I've gone through 3 stages. Like people that knew me in high school would see me like 8-9 years later and go, "You're the guy who was like so career driven, kind of." I wasn't standoffish or arrogant, but I didn't have a lot of friends in high school because as soon as the day ended, I was going to work. At Warner Cable. I was so into that. And then they see me at this point now drinking, and I never really embarrassed myself because I could handle it.
Right.
And then it's funny, people that I hung out with drinking would see me 10 years later, and I wasn't drinking anymore.
Right.
And they were like, who's this guy? So kind of like had these different changes, these different stages, which, that's the evolution of life. I mean, that's what you do. You're not the same as you were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
So what made you stop?
I started to get really violent. Not violent in a sense that I was picking fights with people. I'm just not that type of person. Right. I have pretty good personality. I'm not confrontational. But essentially, there was one night where I bet a game way too heavily, and I got
so you love
gambling too. Yeah,
so that's another high, right? Is that what they say?
Yeah. And again, gamblers always talk about their close losses rather than their close wins. It's like Patriots fans still want to talk about the 3 Super Bowls they lost, not the 5 that they won. So I bet too much on a game. I was going through a really tough financial situation. I was drinking, and I came back home to watch this game that I bet heavily on, and my team was making a comeback. They eventually won, so I won some money. But in the meantime, I was going at it with one of my roommates who we had kind of a falling out, got into a shoving match. I ended up going down to a bar room where guys I knew were, and I told them about this, and they ended up going back to the apartment.
Right.
And
wanted to tune him up, or did they tune him up?
A little bit, but not. Yeah. Luckily, I didn't.
Still, it's a bad look.
It's horrible, and it's also, luckily, it wasn't other people that I knew that would have done a lot more harm. These guys were kind of like, buffoons themselves. So but then I go home that night.
That sows division among the household.
It does, yeah. It doesn't usually work well.
When put a hit out on your roommate.
Yeah, and they're both named the same name, and one gets hit that wasn't supposed to get hit. And then my best friend at the time came down to the bar and said, "What the hell are you doing? Like what?" And I'm like,
so you had lost your mind at this point.
Yeah, I lost my mind, yeah. So I go back home that night. They leave the apartment to go back to their parents' house. Again, I'm 29. They're like 25. And then I wake up the next morning, and I'm like, I see, a couple things tipped over. One of those halogen lights was bent.
Oh, Jesus.
The halogen lights
the
from
torch-ear things.
The 90s. And I'm like walking around. So then I called my best friend. He says, you got to do something. You're
so had you had any idea?
I kind of did, but it was just, I know I had a bet. I know that, so there was a high of that, but I'm like,
right. But then you're getting these pangs, the information drips back.
Yeah, and then my brother says, you got to, do something here. Oh. And that's the last time I drank.
Wow.
It was in 1992. Actually, the following week, I went to a Springsteen concert, and we went to Faneuil Hall afterwards, and I had 2 beers. It was the following Sunday, and that was it. And then when I went home, I literally, it sounds like something out of a bad movie, or, sound like Steve McQueen in Bullet looking into the mirror, or Al Pacino looking into the mirror and cruising. And I just kind of looked and said, you can't do this. You can't drink anymore. So that was December 12th of 1992. So it's over 25 years ago. That's the last time I had a beer or any drink, any alcohol.
Right.
And I'm kind of a control freak, and I was out of control. And waking up the next morning and being told what you did, that's the worst feeling in the world.
I don't miss that at all.
It's one thing to say, okay, we had a party at the house and you came out of your room wearing just underwear and it looked kind of funny. Okay, but when you nearly have your roommates killed, it's sad. And luckily, the next week I was able to sit down with each one of them to explain myself, and they forgave. And I've seen them in the past.
Did you go to meetings, AA?
No,
or like
never
that?
have.
Just stop drinking.
Nope, just stop drinking.
Well, I guess that makes sense. If you're doing it and you hit a switch and next thing you know, it's the next day, then you're not really having fun.
Right.
And you're missing the whole thing.
Yep. And the money.
You know what? You're really, we kind of, I think, Sap, although I grew up in a nicer town, at least then it was.
Yep. Somerville's now the most expensive place to live in the state with Cambridge.
Yeah. I think we kind of had the same thing where we hung with working people.
Oh, yeah.
And, I always hung with the drinkers. They were always the fun ones.
Oh, more fun, yeah.
Who wouldn't?
Yeah.
And I didn't think so. So I knew guys who did that too, and they lost. And one guy, I remember, one guy came into work. We were like 28 years old, and I worked at a hotel, and he showed up. He'd been drinking all afternoon. He showed up in the hotel lobby, bleep-faced, out of his mind.
Ready to work?
No.
Oh, okay.
He just to say hi or whatever. He didn't know what he was doing. He could tell. He was out of his mind, wasted. Just that special look where the eyes are dilated. The eyes aren't there.
You're not with us.
I ran out to the lobby and I said, man, you got to get out of here. You got to get out of here. And he's like, what are you talking? Come on, man, whatever. And he was trying to getting a little pushy and things like that. And I'm saying, Jesus, man, you got to get out of here. And then the manager came out and found him, and they, eventually sent him away. He was like mouthing off and whatever. And then, so he somehow got out of the place and got home. The next morning, we used to jog together on Saturdays. He got to my house to jog. And I said, hey, I call him Bill. I said, Bill, and we got a problem here, man.
Yeah.
And he had no idea what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Had no clue.
Blacked out.
Yeah, totally. Most of that day for him was blacked out.
Oh, yeah. No, it's
and I told him, you got a problem. I think you're fired, man. And he said, why? What did I do? And I had to be the one to tell him, like step by step. And he's like, oh, God, oh, Jesus.
That's scary.
That is scary.
Yeah.
And, I've had other friends who have just woken up having gotten a DUI. In the bang, you're in there, in there.
Yep. Just think how scary that is, getting behind the wheel.
Yeah, and with no memory.
Right.
Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
You find out
everybody else is terrorized.
Somebody's dead, and your life is over, and you have no idea how. You remember going out, drinking a beer.
Well, if I had continued down that path, Lord knows if I would have had someone killed, or maybe I step in front of a car, or do something completely crazy. I felt worse that it, impacted other people than me, because, if I screw up, then you pay the price. But to get other people involved was terrible. But
so you said also that your mom died when you were 27.
23. 23. She died in 1987. I was born in 63. She was diagnosed with lupus in 1984, but lupus eventually can kill you, but it usually takes a very long time. And back in the mid 80s, they wouldn't test for blood transfusions, and she had blood transfusions.
Right.
To this day, it's now coming up on 31 years that she passed. I think she was, died of AIDS.
Yeah.
Because the blood transfusions, they weren't tested, and she just aged. I mean, when she was 60, she looked 50. She was vibrant. She drove a car. She was, doing all sorts of things. And then by the time she died 2.5 years later, she looked 80. So
the deterioration, you think
that was probably 95% of the reason I drank.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm the youngest. I was a mama's boy. I was close to my mother.
Yep.
And, she was there. And then 3 years later, she's not. And I'm like,
Well, but also, so the deterioration for her, she was healthy.
Yeah, 1984,
seemingly, even with lupus. But then how quick was the end?
About a year and a half. I mean, we had a 40th wedding anniversary for my parents in 1986, in October of 86, and then she died 4 months later. She was okay at the anniversary party, but she looked old. She looked older than she was.
To watch her deteriorate physically,
it was tough because we didn't know what it was, and it finally we always thought that she was just going to be in and out of hospitals, and then the final week, it's interesting how hospitals work. They didn't want to divulge so much, but then an intern divulged the information in terms of your mother's in much more serious condition than you think, and then she passed away a week later. The other doctors were like, well, we're working on this and working on that.
Yeah.
And this is at a top flight hospital.
Yeah.
This is Beth Israel. It's not like it's a below average hospital. This is one of the 20 best hospitals in the country. But it was the intern who said there's more issues here. And I think the way she contacted lupus was interesting too, because my mother and father both smoked, and then they both stopped smoking at the age of 58 in 1982. My dad started to look younger. I mean, it was healthy for him. 2 years later, she contacted lupus, and then we found out after she passed away that an underground treatment for lupus in the 50s was nicotine. So who knows if she had just kept smoking, she might have lived 10, 15 more years. I mean, you hear all these crazy stories of people who drink black coffee with Sambuca in it every day. Yeah. They eat like crap. They smoke cigarettes, and they're 92 years old with a full head of hair.
I know it does make you.
Know.
I know, and that isn't that the question?
It's crazy. It's almost like I'm really the one kid that wanted them to stop smoking because I detest smoking. I used to hide their cigarettes. I just
smokers don't like that.
I don't know, and they stopped.
I did that too.
Yeah, she went to a hypnotist to stop smoking. Same one Tommy Heinsohn went to, and it worked.
Those were everywhere. Non-smoking.
Yeah. Well, I went for weight loss. It didn't work.
Did you really?
Yeah, I went for weight loss. Yeah, it was probably around 1983, 84. I'm like 20, 21, and. Like the year before, the Patriots drafted Ken Sims with the first pick. Lee Steinberg was his agent, and Lee Steinberg is still an agent. In fact, I follow him on Twitter, and likewise, I think we had him on during Super Bowl week last year.
A lot, I think.
Yeah, he's gone through his issues with alcohol, lost everything, and is making a really nice comeback. And he was interested in representing me, so I got all excited, and I did a demo tape, and I was like, okay, I got to take some weight off.
Yeah.
And I went to the hypnotist to try to curb my eating, and it didn't work because the hypnotist, he's trying to put you under, and he's saying, just think of yourself on a beach looking really good. And like the first thing that came to mind for me was Kelly's roast beef on Revere Beach. So at that point I said, this was $100 wasted.
Well, maybe it backfired actually. Maybe
it
locked you in.
I've gone in, and I've now go to Kelly's as often as I can.
So 23 years old, and your mother dies.
Yep.
And that has got to be a kick in the balls.
She's the one that held the family together.
Right.
My dad was a great guy, always worked, did his thing.
And suddenly your mother's not there.
Yeah, she was the glue.
Had she been following your career?
Oh, God, she was so proud of it to the point where sometimes it was embarrassing, but that's what moms do.
Exactly.
She was cutting out anything that was written about me, and, I was like, Mom, just calm down. I don't need all that. But she was a proud mother. So, yeah. And by the time she passed on, I had kind of waned away from, I had certainly not been working at Warner Cable anymore, and I was drinking a lot and doing less and less for ESPN, and was still in school. It was just kind of a weird time where I just couldn't process all that. At the time, you think you can deal with it, but then I realize now why I did what I did, because that was my way of coping. It's not an excuse, but it's kind of an explanation.
Well, and I think it's also a rational one. I mean, to face the pain of losing your mother, especially when you're that age, you're not even done cooking yourself when you're 23 years old. You're a really young man.
Yep.
And to have that,
and Italian guys are close to their mothers.
Yes,
and
I know. Everybody's mother makes the best gravy. I never, believe me.
Don't even argue with that.
I knew to stay away from those fights. I used to work in East Boston.
Right,
and
just eat it. And, be happy with that.
But it's got to be devastating because now you do work, and now there's that person's not there to be proud of you anymore.
Of course,
right?
Yeah.
And people I don't think realize that when your parent dies, it's the tsunami of unexpected emotions.
Oh,
It hits you every which way, and you have no idea seeing it coming.
And in a sense, I was fortunate because I have two older sisters, one since passed on, and they kind of filled in the role as my mother.
Right.
And they did a great job, but it's never the same. I mean, it's still your mother, and I was a mama's boy. I'll be the first one to admit it. She was a big sports fan, too. My dad was a big sports fan, but my dad, that generation was different. He went to work every day. Then after work, he'd get together with the guys, and they would drink. And then Saturdays and Sundays, he'd be St. Anthony's Club in the North End. And my mother was the one that actually would take me to games because she loved hockey and baseball and all that stuff. So we were, really close. And again, being the youngest, I was spoiled, especially since my other siblings are all close together in age. The four of them are 6 years apart. And then I come 9 years later. I was like a grandchild at that point because they were like 39 when they had me.
Right.
So I got 4 trips to Italy as a kid to visit my grandmother there.
Yeah.
My brother, closest to me in age, who's 9 years old and never went there. I was like the spoiled one, and being that close to her, and then she goes through that, and she's not there. I didn't know how to process it.
No, there's no. It isn't. It is unnatural. There is no good way to process it.
Yeah.
You said your dad was going out with the boys. Was he pretty much every night of the week have some few beers?
Probably. Oh yeah, they would go out afterwards. I mean that's the way that generation rolled.
Yeah.
I mean he would have been 94 if he was still alive. I mean he was born in 1924, so we're talking about, he was a supervisor, foreman for Perini, and they had a lot of big jobs. Yeah, construction. Yep. And, after he always took care of his guys, and then after a hard day's work, they would all go have beers wherever, and then he'd come home, maybe have dinner, maybe not. But, we kind of understood that. It's just now, today, the kids would need therapy to deal with dad coming home after having a couple of cocktails and missing dinner.
Oh, no doubt. And so here's the thing, Sap.
Well, we always had food, and the roof was on. Was provided. We never, nothing was shut off.
Yeah, and I get it. And my co-host is Jay. You've met Jay before, but Jay's on a trip right now, and so that's one of the things that you talk about is that Jay and I love to kick back and have drink some beers.
Yeah,
and we don't get blackout. We're not in trouble. We're just a couple of fat old guys who love kicking back, and you get a little buzzed and you slip into to sleep, but it's. I think it's a direct reaction to life. Everybody needs something. Life is not easy. It's not. I know we're not SEAL Team 6 here,
right?
But life is not easy.
No.
So people will easily judge people who drink and say, look at that. Oh my God, he's functioning alcoholic. He's got to drink whatever. Goddamn right. Everybody needs something.
Yeah.
Like think of all the psychosomatic medications that are out, psychotropic medications that are out there. I mean,
I take Prozac. Prozac, very mild dosage, and it seems to take the edge off.
Yes.
It doesn't put me into a panic attack.
Everybody does something.
Right.
And some people can do it just with exercise or a shrink or this and that.
Right.
And some people just smoke a lot of weed or, everybody does something.
Yep.
I love having beers because it's also just fun, and great. Of course, it makes you fat, and then there's that everything.
But if you're over Jay's house or he's over your house, and you guys are neighbors, what's the harm there? Yeah, I don't see what the
absolutely.
harm. Now I'll see friends for coffee instead, so it's a different thing, but it's still
right. And then there's the I think you find more pleasure in eating.
Oh boy,
which is, and I don't mean like the stuff in your face. You like food.
I love
Who doesn't
food.
like food?
No, I ever since I was a kid, it was funny because up until I was about 8, I was always kind of thin, didn't like to eat a lot. And then we took a trip to Italy in the summer of 71. And ever since I come back, it's over 45 years now. It's been nonstop. And I have always liked going to restaurants, even as a kid. Like my mother would laugh and say, oh God, I got to, go Howard Johnson's. Remember Howard Johnson's was around? If we went visiting someone, I always wanted to stop there. And, my sister and brother-in-law, they got married when I was like 9. And every time I go out with them, they go, oh boy, he wants to go to another restaurant. Yeah. I always liked sitting in I still do. If I was this wealthy person, that's where I would probably blow a lot of my money. Maybe I'd buy a racehorse or a radio station or something like that too. Or maybe a newspaper.
So you think of these things and you think I guess my parents died when I was younger, before I hit 40 anyway.
Right.
One was dead when I was 31.
Yeah.
And so you think about that. And my family's huge into cancer. They're big cancer people. They get all sorts of cancers. My mother had it for years and had it.
Mine too. My family as well. Yeah.
Yeah. You lost a sister.
My sister. Yep. I've got 2 brothers who were survivors, and my dad died of cancer. So yeah.
So you got this. So this thing, Sap, where a battle that I have, and that Jay and I talk about all the time, and I think you and I probably have, is. So what's the lesson? Is the lesson to live every day like it's the last day on Earth? Or is the lesson to, I better be careful and try to do whatever I can to not have the same health thing as them? So
yeah, I mean, well, Mickey Mantle went through this because Mickey Mantle...
I was just going to mention him.
was pretty sure he was going to die in his late 30s because his dad died and his granddad died, so he never took care of himself. And he wasn't quite the player he probably could have been. He could have been the greatest player in the history of the sport. Instead, he's one of the 10 or 12 greatest players in the history of the sport.
So he would get wrecked every night because he felt that this could end at any time.
I'm going to be gone at 39, so why bother?
And Sap, I kind of respect that.
Yeah.
I understand that. If he had that, he saw his father die that young, and
just assume you're going to go...
Yeah, I'm not here for a long time. I'm here for a good time.
Yep, and he certainly was.
Right.
But then in his 60s, when obviously he's going through the liver transplant, he's like, well, don't look at me as a hero because I could have done things differently. And I'm sure he's thinking back of what he could have been, even a greater player.
Yeah, and so remember he had a great quote on that. If I knew I was going to live so long, I would have taken care of myself.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and I think that Pat Summerall tried to save him at the end.
Yep,
because Summerall had the same thing,
same issues.
And
but so many of the athletes that were big in the 50s in New York, it was just smoking and drinking was sexy at that point. Humphrey Bogart smoked in his movies. It was considered sexy. These guys drank. It was considered, sexy. Vince Lombardi, a football coach who was into conditioning, smoked, would drink after games. He'd have a house party after a home game in Green Bay, and people were drinking highballs in the 60s. Right. It was just the way it was accepted. I mean, it's different now. But who knows? Who knows?
Well, there's a lot of liquor stores out there, Sap.
There's still plenty of liquor stores.
That it's not. I think the drinking levels are right up there.
Of course they are.
Or maybe even more.
I think they're closeted more so than back then. Back then it was out in the open.
So let me tell you, like in my town, which is a wannabe beautiful person's town, it wants to be Winchester. It never will be, but it is.
I like it.
You go to if you go to the dump, the city yard, so you can dump your stuff. I mean, not your garbage, but you can dump leaves and twigs and bottles and cardboard at this kind of the city's dump. But they've got a big dumpster and it's full of bottles.
Sure. Oh yeah.
Because people aren't putting it out in their curb in the recycling because it's going to look like Cappy's liquor store has been in front of your house.
Your neighbor has a problem, right? Right. That's what they would say. It's interesting you bring that up because when I was in my drinking days, I actually had the basement apartment of the house. That was the man cave, and I used to take all the empties and put them in giant trash bags and then put them outside my door, and the kid next door would return them. I think I put him through college. I mean, it was just like every week there were like 2 giant trash bags of
cans.
Empty cans.
What kind of beer?
Coors Light. I was a Coors Light guy, and we used to put them in the freezer for like 15 minutes.
Yes.
Ooh, man, they would get so cold. Except sometimes I'd put like 4 or 5 at the end of the night and forget they were in there, and you'd open them the next morning, and they're like, whoa, there's
That's
Coors
the
Light
thing about
slush all over the place.
Beer drinking drinkers is you get snobby about temperatures. I've noticed.
Oh, big time.
So I have friends who will only go to this bar because they have the ice cold beer and they can only have it ice cold. I guess if you're gonna kill 30, then
you're a perfectionist. I was a perfectionist. My dad. It was funny. My sister got married in 1985, and we had my dad paid for the wedding, had open bar. When he got to the place, the only thing he was upset about, no matter what, like limos, nothing, whatever, the beer wasn't cold enough. And he's like flipping out. I go, Dad, the beer's not cold enough.
That's a good man in my book.
Oh, yeah. And I I tried one and I agreed. That seemed to be a bigger issue than, maybe Thomas Jefferson was thinking about at the same age about trying to form a more perfect union. But
who knows?
Maybe he liked his beer cold too.
I'm assuming those guys. Well, actually, that's all they drank, Sap. There was nothing that wasn't alcoholic back then.
Right? Yeah, they had their issues as well. Everyone fights these demons.
So, 27, you decided to underachieve.
Yes.
Or
and open a sporting goods store.
Open a sporting goods store.
Yep.
So why were you in the sport? So that's so you could drink beer or something.
Yeah, well, it was more like I would work part-time in a sporting goods store, and anytime when you're that age, you think you could do it better than everyone else.
Right.
So like, well, if I open a sporting goods store, I'm going to run it better than anybody that's ever run it. And I got my brothers involved. They financed it, and, we had, I would say, in one form, we had 3 at one point, and then we condensed it to 1, and it lasted like 3 years, and it was not a good business decision.
Okay.
But that's partly because I was drinking uncontrollably at that moment. I was just
uncontrollably. How would you describe that?
By just like that was my biggest
morning
focus.
Through night?
No, that's the one thing about me. Once I started, I didn't finish.
Right.
But normally it would be after work, late afternoon. But then it was like a machine. I mean, my nickname was Easy Goer, which was a horse in 1989 that lost 2 of the 3
the Triple Crown
races. Because he was flying at the end. So it was like Easy Goer. My friends would, laugh and say, this guy gets stronger as the night goes on. Usually people will have 6 in like the first 80 minutes and then they kind of peter out. I was just like, down the stretch they come, and here's me closing, like Easy Goer. So, I was drinking every day. Weekends, I just wasn't concentrating on the business, and it was
if you're drinking every day, then the weekends you're really drinking.
Oh,
the weekends you're drinking.
Yeah, now you're starting it, right. Early afternoon, and that turns into the same time at night.
A lot of sports to watch.
Oh, God, yeah. A lot of sports
Sundays.
to bet on, and, you're watching football, and friends are over, and, I remember there was one Saturday when I was living with my roommates in a different apartment. I had the room off the living room, and everybody was watching a football game, and I was like, my head was spinning as much as I drank. And instead of going through that to get to the bathroom, I just opened my window and yacked out the window. You gotta yak. I'm not gonna go through all these people.
Etiquette.
Let them see me. Go to the bathroom and clean that up.
Damage.
I don't know where it went out the window. I think it went on top of the awning. But the woman that was in the first floor was like 97.
Yeah.
So she probably wasn't aware of it. She maybe thought a body fell out of the third
nobody
floor.
would assume somebody would really do that.
No,
so it's a safe
it was
thing
pretty
to do.
good. And then like 5 minutes later, my friend calls, and what are you doing? I go, well, I just threw up out the window. Oh, okay. I said, let's go out again because I felt good. I was like, pick me up in 15 minutes and we're off to the next place.
Tactical chunder.
I'm
the
cleansed.
English call it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was probably one of the nights that ended with Chinese food.
All right. So into your 30s here, the sports thing is done.
Yep.
Did you leave media for a while?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And why?
That's a great question. I still don't know how to answer that because I probably burned bridges with. That's one I can't quite answer.
You stopped drinking.
I stopped drinking around 93.
Money.
Yeah, well,
and when you did, you were gambling.
Yeah, and what I would do too is I was working. I was doing some telemarketing work.
Oh God,
that's
not good for the
that's
self-esteem.
Not good for anything. No, I mean if you got on good projects, it was good. If you got on bad ones, it was just like the toughest job you'll ever have. Then I started to get into. Shortly thereafter, I got into opening a deli, grocery store, and then a restaurant. I did that for like 15 years.
Deli?
Yeah. The first thing I opened was a deli. It was called Portobella's right in Somerville. You'd walk in, you'd have all your fruits and vegetables right across from City Hall on Highland Ave.
Oh, okay.
And, fruits, vegetables, all that stuff.
Is that the one that's nestled into an apartment complex?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
And then we'd have cold cuts, and then in the back you'd have groceries. So we did that for a little while. It was okay. And then I ended up taking over a restaurant really right near my home. And it was on Highland Ave in Somerville as well. It was Supreme Kitchen right across from the hospital in Somerville. And it went well. We had it for 10 years. It was pretty good, but that's the toughest job I've ever had.
It's running a restaurant.
Yeah, if you can run a restaurant or work in a restaurant, every other job is simple.
And this whole time you're not doing any more broadcasting?
No. And then it's interesting. A friend of mine, Jeff Santos, who was in radio, he had me over his studio at it wasn't Kiss 108, it was Kiss AM. He was doing a Sunday night show there, had me on. And then when he started at 1510 in 2008, I used to do a weekly phoner with him to talk sports. And I kind of got a little bit of an itch going. And then I sold my restaurant. And shortly thereafter, he had a guy doing sports full-time, left, and he offered me the job. And then I got into it. I didn't really do radio before. It was always TV.
Right.
I've had, even over the last 8 years, had to learn that radio is different than TV.
Yes.
Much different. I like it a lot better because it's just spontaneous.
Oh, yeah.
It's real. Like this type of conversation is not going to work on TV.
No.
At all.
No.
So I got back in there. Jeff was great. and then eventually became NBC Sports Radio, and I did that for a while. And then one day I was with Chris Villani, who's been a great friend over the years. We were having lunch, and he had started here at the Herald, and he told me to come in and do a show with him for one day, and then I haven't left since. Well, I did for a few months, but I'm back.
I mean, do you must, I know that I do all the time. I mean, this is something I would tell to somebody who's 21, or even certainly a young person, is it, I mean, I'm in my mid-40s. You got a few years on me.
I'll be 55 in April.
Right. So, I mean, you got to look back and say, how the frig did I get here?
Oh, yeah. Oh, no.
And here has been like
all over
you've
the
had an
place.
extraordinary life.
Well, in the sense that, yeah, there's been a lot of...
You've done 1,000
different dead ends, right? Yeah,
you've done 1,000 different things.
Right.
You've made friends all over the place. You've met, world famous people, and
then people that people wouldn't want to meet.
Right.
And I've met and talked with people that most people would be intimidated by.
Like, can we have an example of that? Nothing that'll get you killed.
I don't want to name names, but yeah, we people that people would
Let's
know
say
if
in the
I
sense
said
that
the name.
Perhaps that if someone needed money,
yes, they could have furnished that. Yes,
they
without
could have furnished
an application.
Exactly.
No need. Doesn't have to go before
on the
a
loan?
board. Oh yeah, yeah. You could say that, and it's people would say, is that a week, a month, a year? No, it's a week.
Yeah.
But no, you get to meet different people, and I like talking to all sorts of people. I think taking the train to work is interesting.
Yes.
The blue line part of it's very easy to deal with, but when you're dealing with the red and the green line, not so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm one of those people that will talk to people on the train, which no one does anymore because everybody's just staring at their iPhone.
Yep.
No one communicates.
Yeah,
verbally.
I would have hated to be talked to on the train. Well, you wouldn't talk to me probably.
I probably would, but you're shy by nature.
I am.
You are. See, I'm not. I'm
no, that's great.
outgoing.
That's why you know everybody in this building.
It's amazing. I just
you
walk
could be
up
the
to
mayor of
people.
this building. There's a power in that, Sap. There's a power in having that.
I just, you know what? I think as you get older, I don't really even care who it is. Like we've had presidential candidates come in. We had President Trump on when he was running for president, 4 or 5 times, and you just talk to him like he's.
Who were you intimidated by to interview? Anybody? Or were you when you look back? Because sometimes I look at an interview and I was like, for me, it's what it's been is that for me, I'll say it's been recently these successful podcasters that I've become this pathetic fanboy of these podcasts where now some of these hosts I have on, and it's a kiss ass interview,
right?
But afterwards I'm like Jesus, you pussy, that was ridiculous. The interviews they've been fine, but
who have you had on?
Like Dave Rubin, Owen Benjamin. If you start listening to these people in that world of these podcasters, would you know these names? So they're really. It's not.
I've heard of Rubin, though. Yeah.
Yeah, I was not intimidated when we talked to Trump.
No.
Or really anybody else. There are some people, like for instance, with Kathy Ireland, where there's.
There's the drool
18-year-old,
factor. Right,
18-year-old Tom Shattuck is there.
Yeah, we all. Yeah. Exactly.
So is nobody?
No, not really. I wouldn't say any athletes or executives from sports or any of the presidential candidates. No, I probably have more nerve than brain, or at least I did when I was younger, because it didn't faze me. So I wouldn't say anyone. I could see your point though when you're dealing with someone who's in the same industry. So if you have a podcaster on, now you're really on their footing.
Yes.
So that could be the intimidating part. Like if you're having a mayor on and you're just asking questions and trying to have a conversation, that's more natural.
Yeah.
But when you're doing something with someone who's an expert at that, that can be intimidating. That'd be like if I was introduced to a football coach and all of a sudden I had to be a football coach for a week. That would be intimidating because I couldn't do it.
Yeah, and people, if they're not in the business, politicians are easy. It's like sending a fax because they're full of it anyway. They're sticking to their points. There's no real conversation. Usually, like with Capuano, you might get something.
Right.
Actually, the Somerville guys
sure.
and the mayor, that's a little bit different.
Yeah, Capuano I love because he's authentic. He wears the short sleeve shirt with the tie undone.
Yep.
The hair's a little messy. He doesn't care.
Yep.
And when
high blood pressure, probably taking some little medicine.
He shakes your hand, looks you in the eye, and he'll have a conversation about whatever, hockey, and he knows what he's talking about. So that's why he's successful, because he's authentic. I think in a sense, when we got the chance to interview Trump, that you felt like you were just talking to someone, that he wasn't measured at all at any point. I mean, his critics think he should be more measured, but he's never going to be that.
No,
at 71 years old, he's not going to flip and become a different person.
He seemed like a kind of guy who wanted to hang with the boys a little bit. You know, you could see the Billy Bush thing, where he's coming from, where it's, hey, you know what? We're going to bond here, even while we're waiting to shoot or whatever. And
I get the feeling he's like kind of an ex-jock. You know, he claims he was the best player in New York in the 60s. He must not have heard that Mickey Mantle was playing there. But he was better. I think, probably more speed down the line. Yeah, better switch hitter. So I think he was still comfortable in that. You know, still among the boys. The construction guys love him. We know throughout the campaign, you know, talking with construction guys, service industry, they just like the guy because they just felt that he was approachable and that he sounded like them. Now, that's not necessarily what wins a presidential election, but it did in 2016 because I think people kind of tired of the buttoned-up, rehearsed politician that we normally see. It was just no, absolutely, and that's changed everybody. Even just today more, and that can change in 4 years. I mean, in 4 years from now or 3 years from now, you know, the country may want someone that's certainly more buttoned up. We don't know.
Well, and when is this total scream fest going to subside? Like on Twitter
from the
now,
left, or even from?
I mean, it's just as
there's
fighting.
Republicans that don't like him.
We have digital social media now where you can instantly communicate with anybody you've ever known, and people from across the world you can communicate with.
Sure.
And what we're doing right now is having a huge Royal Rumble.
Yep.
That's it. I want to call the other person an a-hole. Think for a while, see if I can Google something that makes him look dumber than I am, and that's how I'm going to get through the day. Yep. I mean, will this? Do you see it ending?
No, because the technology is there, and I don't think people are getting bored with this. Right? I mean,
I guess not.
But it's setting us back a little bit in a sense that, first of all, the communication skills, verbal communication skills, aren't working. You know, people don't talk anymore.
Which sucks because this is fake. This Twitter world, the phone, this is fake BS.
Yeah, I mean, you put something out on Twitter. I don't have about 1,500 followers, so it's not like a lot of followers. And you know, you just will put out something, and next thing you know, everybody will have an opinion on it. And then when it gets personal, that's where it gets a little bit.
And it's unfortunate too because you know the
just
thing
argue
is
the point. I'm passive aggressive. I'd love to discuss stuff with people. But don't get moron whatever. It's not necessary.
If they were in your face, they wouldn't say any of this stuff.
Of course not.
None of this stuff. And I actually, when I've crossed the line a couple of times, I felt like a horse's ass. Like I told you, I crossed the line with. I just said I started a Twitter fight with what's his name who played Fonzie. Winkler. Henry Winkler,
yeah.
And of course, he said, I'm really proud of my country today. And of course, I had to take umbrage to that because I'm a tough guy, right? So I tweet back with him, you're just proud of your country now, Henry?
Yeah.
And he replied to me, I'm proud of it every day, Tom. And I thought, wow, I'm a horse's ass. Jesus. And I just.
He got back to you, though. That's good.
He did.
Yeah,
I was thrilled that it was the Henry Winkler.
Yeah.
But also, it's like, sit the freak down, Tom. Who do you think you are? I did the same thing. I went after Chris Hayes for something. And he very reasonably replied to me. Like, what is my problem? I'm trying not to be like a tough guy, I guess, where I wouldn't be in person anymore. And I seriously think, and I've met people in person who we've had these Twitter fights, and everybody breaks down and immediately wants to be friendly. And that's a better high, an endorphin rush, than the thing you get on Twitter.
Sure. Yeah.
I just think that.
Well, because the person's three-dimensional, or at least they should be three-dimensional, where on Twitter it's not.
Yeah.
It could be this nameless, faceless, communicative skill.
Yes,
which is just...
but unfortunately, what it does is between Twitter and news platforms is that people are finding they want to treat people like these cattle that just go like CNN. You go from CNN to their Twitter platform, to their Facebook presence, to their Instagram, to CNN broadcast, back to the CNN.com. And they want to keep you in there. Yep. And it's not just CNN. It's every organization. It benefits them to have passionate consumers of their media. And the best way to do that is to stoke the flames.
Right.
Stoke the flames. So these organizations have stopped being news organizations. They're just simply huge corporations. They need eyes on their products.
And they clickbait.
Right, exactly. And so, unfortunately, it's made a-holes out of a lot of people who should know better. People should know better that we're all being played. People should know better, I think, that even we're fighting about politics here, but Lindsey Graham and Nancy Pelosi are having martinis together,
Right.
having a great time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's exactly it. It's like in the sports world, you'll say, boy, Tom Brady and such quarterback, they have this rivalry. They probably don't like each other. And you pick a side. Someone's a Brady guy, someone's a Rodgers guy. And then you find out they're hanging out together because they're both making a ton of money. They are married to or date beautiful women. They're laughing. Yes. And all the people underneath them are just going at it like, who cares, really? I used to have a friend. I mean, saying this probably would have gotten him in trouble, but there's 1 billion Chinese people that don't give a bleep about what we're doing. Like if we're having a really knockdown discussion about the Second Amendment or whatever it may be, or something that happened to us during a day that, most people would think are first world problems. Like my cable went out for an hour.
Oh, yeah.
But it came back on, and so now I can watch the NBA All-Star game. There's actually probably 7 billion people in the world that don't care because that's not even part of their daily happenings. They don't have cable TV. They don't even know what the NBA is.
No.
Well, we've got first world problems.
Except we're eating ourselves to death.
Yeah. Oh, without question.
We have it so well here that we can't stop eating ourselves to death. I mean, what a bunch of jerks. Really, it should be some. There's got to be some better civilization out there that can handle this embarrassment of riches better than we are.
Yeah, no, I think, again, this is why we get called the big, ugly American, right? Because, we're boastful, we're bullies, all of those things, and we kind of live unto ourselves. I mean, of course, social media has made it interesting that you can connect throughout the world. So this is what happens. You've got, we can connect to anybody overseas. The Olympics are taking place in South Korea. You can connect there. Yeah. And I just think at times we're given certain tools that we don't know how to use quite yet. I go back to 2001: A Space Odyssey when, they throw the bone up in the air and it turns into a spaceship.
I didn't see the movie. I'm sorry about that.
Great movie.
Should I watch it drunk or
drunk? Yes,
well,
yes,
done.
drunk. Because I haven't seen it since I stopped drinking. I may watch and go, "What the hell is this thing about?" But being on my 18th to 22nd beer, man, that thing was awesome.
Before I got married, and I got married late, and had late. I mean, I don't know, it was 36 or something, whatever it was.
That's where you probably should get married.
Well, I mean, but at that time, I started thinking it's. I mean, I had dated a few women, but it started to I started to look back at my life and say, Jesus, I miss having girlfriends. I miss having healthy parents. I miss having, new things. When you're 22, everything's new. Look at this new neighborhood. Look at this new bar. Look at these new kind of people.
Look at the new car I have.
Yeah, new kind of people, new personalities. By the time you're 38, whatever, you've seen everything, done everything once. It's already, okay, I see. He's that guy. I see. She's that girl. He's that guy. Right. Whatever. And so I started to get sad. I was reaching out on Facebook to people I knew that when I was 22, feeling sorry for myself, saying, "Oh, I wish I was 1994 again," and they were saying, "Oh, buck up," or whatever. And so I thought, wow, it's really possible that I may go through the rest of my life alone, with nobody, with nothing, never having known what it is to have kids, and I thought to myself that there's a chance that I've effed this thing up. That I made decisions somewhere along the line, though it's been fun, that have effed things up. Well, that has never really ended. I feel in a different way because now I have a wife and now I have a kid. I have kids, and I'm blessed in every possible way. My wife's younger and attractive, and kids are great, and so it's embarrassment of riches, like I said again. But I still look and say, what exactly am I effing doing here? I am not the best Tom Shattuck I can be. This is the whole reason for this podcast is to wonder and to try to do better. I'm not the best Tom Shattuck I can be. I'm fatter. I'm lazier. I'm all these other things. Sometimes in a pinch I could pull it off and be awesome Tom Shattuck and get something done.
Maybe that's too much work.
I think maybe you're right.
Yeah, it could be a lot of work. Just you have to be yourself, but also, if you're too hard on yourself, look, there's no one that's perfect. We're all loaded with issues that we have to deal with every day. Could you be nicer to someone? Could you, I don't know, there's just different ways you can look at that. Now, you have a different situation than me. You're married with kids. I'm alone, so I kind of I'm a loner in that sense that I can go do whatever I want.
Is it lonely being alone?
No, because I have really good friends, family, all of that stuff. But there's days where there's like a day off. I like nothing better than going out, grab breakfast, go to a movie by myself. So I don't
Are there times when you're doing something?
I'm easily amused. I can kind of I can tune into things pretty quickly. Again, I have a lot of interests, so I like sports, I like politics, I love movies.
Yeah, that's good.
So I can kind of occupy myself. I see a lot of movies, which I think people that are loners probably do. I don't want to be Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver. He went in one direction. Well, but yeah, and people have said, you go to a movie alone. I go, well, you read a book alone. Like, I don't need a posse to go see a movie.
I think that's a big strength, because I do. Like, I
can eat lunch alone. I could spend the whole day alone.
That's
I have no problem.
Sap. That's great, because I need a witness there. Though. I need that. I need somebody else there. Else, to me, it's not really great. And then I start getting sad, and then I think even going to the Super Bowls. This last time around, I had a friend who lived around there, so whatever. But the time before, I was like, all this, and talking to this, all this, it was just like a feeling of, this is an amazing moment, and it's like historical. It's extraordinary. People talking to,
people would kill to go to a Super Bowl,
and there's nobody there with me. And then I started thinking, damn, I wish my dad could have seen this.
Sure.
I wish he could have seen this and been proud of me or anything, and said.
But if you're mystical, maybe he is.
Well, maybe, but I mean, do you ever have those times at all? Does this ghost of loneliness ever sometimes catch you and say?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think you want to let people know what you're doing, or people to say, hey, I saw this, or I listened to this, and it was good. Yeah, everybody wants positive reinforcements.
Are you ever afraid of anything?
The eye doctor.
Right. Okay.
Seriously, that's the only...
Because you think you're going to go blind.
Yeah, I've got that in my head that's going to happen. And if I continue to not go to the eye doctor, that may happen.
Well, so that's the biggest fear you have.
That's the only fear I've had in life.
It's literally an existential fear like that. It's not just a pit of loneliness. It's not...
None of that. No, I have... Look, I wish my sister was still alive. I wish my parents were still alive. I've lost friends. All of that. But I can kind of wrap my head around that. Ever since I was a kid, I was always fearful of it.
Jesus.
I may have dreamt it or whatever. And then even through school, the eye test every year. You'd have the eye test. I'd cheat. I'd do anything to just not have to go to an eye doctor, because they would give you these tests in school, and I think it was in the 4th grade. They probably should have said he's got to go to an eye doctor. I kind of cheated my way through it, or whatever. I panicked my way through it, or guessed my way through it, so I didn't have to go to the eye doctor. I didn't go to the eye doctor for the first time till I was 38.
Wow,
I found out I was diabetic, and then I had to go. So I wear glasses. It's going to the eye doctor. It's not like people touching my eyes or doing anything. That doesn't even concern me. It's just I have this fear built up that they're going to tell me I'm going blind, which is absurd. Dentist doesn't bother me. I can get an EKG. If someone said I had 6 months to live, I'd say, okay, I'm going back to drinking, and I'm going to have a fun final 6 months. The other one, I would have trouble dealing with. It's weird. Everybody has a phobia. That's my phobia.
That said, it's a nice thing to have. I mean, no, it's not a nice thing to have. What I'm saying is, at least it's a tangible thing. I know what it is.
Yeah.
At least you're not depressed, or are you
depressed?
No,
I'm not trying to find it.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not really looking to. I can move on from things.
Right. So you don't get. Are you bipolar or anything? Do you get?
No.
Do you go into deep ruts of depression?
No.
Right.
No. The only time, like when I was out of work for a while, you get into a rut. But I wouldn't call it depression.
Right.
Right. And then when the money runs out, then it becomes depression. Because people that say that money's not important are so full of it. They're completely full.
Totally.
It's usually rich people that say that. Well, you can be happy. No, you need to make sure that everything's covered. Your mortgage, your rent, all your bills, and just that you have enough money that, say, when you go out and you want to order a meal and you're not looking at a menu saying, well, I'm going to have the cheeseburger because I can't afford the prime rib. That's the worst feeling in the world. Everyone's been there. Mm-hmm. Those are,
Yes. The two people at this table are still there,
We're still on steak and cheese subs, yes.
Well, depending,
Depending,
please.
yes.
I was told you that we got our tax refund, and I was like, I felt like I was, Kanye throwing $100 bills around because I got the brand name stuff.
Right, yeah.
It wasn't, Market Basket brand mayonnaise. It was Hellman's this time.
Yeah.
You know,
but the market basket stuff is fine.
Oh, I
know. A lot of it's the same thing with just a different.
I know
labeling.
It is fine, but it's still. And you know, I have stuff. I've a house and run all this, so I'm not destitute. But still, it would be nice to be one of those people who could just. If you and I could just go to the Capitol Grill for burgers after this, that would be great.
Yeah,
without it being incredibly devastating.
Yeah, and then when you're on your way home, go, why'd I do that? I had something else I had to pay, or think ahead to the next day. You obviously, when you have a family, you have to think a different way. Me, I'm not motivated by money, but I like the security of it. So I have to make that connection so that I become more secure.
So what do you endeavor to do something to make more money?
I like what I do now, but it's...
Well, what we both do now could go away
by
quickly.
Tuesday. It's and the unemployment's run out, so that's not an option. But I've never been one to overly worry about things. I just have this feeling that something good can happen. And it might sound... And again, I'm not a religious person at all, but things have a way of working out at some point. They do. They just. I think you have to have that belief, or else you're never going to sleep. You're never going to enjoy yourself. You're never going to do anything to the point where you work yourself into a slow death. And again, I'm fortunate. I'm not married. I don't have kids, so I can kind of have that mentality. My cost at my apartment's cheap.
Yeah.
So I'm not. I haven't created a big mess for myself.
Are there aspirations that you have that you want to reach?
You know what? That's strange. As far as personal ones, no, I don't want to get married, don't want to have kids, so there's none of that. I'm not even a big traveler. Like, some people say, well, I want to go to wherever. Probably a couple cities in the world.
How about fame? Because you're in a business that...
Yeah, I'm more concerned with the job than fame, because I think that will take care of itself.
Right.
I just enjoy doing this so much that the fame part of it, I'd be happier with more pay than fame.
Right.
But that kind of go hand in hand, don't they?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're more exposed, then you're going to become more famous.
The thing is, in broadcasting or column writing, those kind of things, there's a lot of people who just go absolutely broke.
Oh, God, yeah. No,
most of them, I would say, actually.
No, it's not. Look, I think in this business, 5% of the people make most of the money, and 95% make a living or thereabouts.
So will you even if you can get more money, would you not get a real job?
That's probably my next step.
You could probably go to PR and get a real job.
Do something like that. We've talked about.
Or would you rather just kind of scrape by if you could do broadcasting?
I would rather do both. The best way to do it, because you can still, the way things are now, you can still do this on a part-time basis and then work another job. And that's what a lot of people do now. You cobble together three different things.
Especially if you're going to do anything in broadcasting.
Yeah, unless you...
My number one piece of advice, if you're a young man and doing broadcasting, is marry well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That is the thing. You marry a woman who is making lots of money and
owns a radio station or does something. That's a good way to go. Yeah, because you can have I think Jerry Thornton's one guy who was working in the courts making X number of dollars, but then he was also writing for Barstool, and then he was doing work at EEI. So you put that all together, you've got that job that is going to be there, and it's not going to go anywhere, and it takes care of all your bills, and this is more fun stuff. I think I'm going to have to go in that direction at some point.
What would you say to somebody?
Because I'm older. I'm not. If I was 28 living at home, it's different.
Somebody says, I want to get into broadcasting. Let's say they're about to go off onto college. They're 18 years old. What do you tell them?
I would tell them first, go to a school that would give you a really well-rounded education. And if you're going to go to college.
That's if the broadcasting doesn't work, or because it'll supplement the broadcasting?
It will supplement the broadcasting. It'll also make you a better broadcaster. Look, Syracuse has a great broadcast journalism school, Northwestern. In the city here, Boston University and Emerson. But I think they can get more experience, hands-on, as interns.
Absolutely.
And get, if you're going to go to college, get a degree, political science, marketing, business management, whatever other interests you have, and then just get as much on-air experience or behind-the-scenes experience by interning. I think we've seen interns come here that will learn more in like 3 weeks than they did in 4 years at school.
Yeah,
I'm amazed at when some students get out of school after spending 4 years and their parents spent $200,000 on an education, and they really don't seem like they got a lot out of it.
God, Sap, I think to me that's the majority.
Right.
So you spend $200,000. And,
get a piece of paper.
Right. And you've spent 4 years where you could be out getting street smarts and out learning things. There's something to be said for going into some place. I mean, I'm anti-college.
Yep.
Largely anti-college. I do agree with you that internships.
I'm big on I think if you come from the means to go spend $200,000 on a college education, great. If you don't, I don't think you should put yourself in a hole for the rest of your life.
Right.
To borrow that money, you can go to state school.
Right.
If the potential of having a trade, there's nothing wrong with being a plumber, electrician at all. In fact, they make a ton of money.
Yes.
But I've also had friends who have made money in that who wish they also had some college behind them. They would have been better businessmen. You know, they could have learned other things. So it kind of goes hand in hand.
Well, there comes a time in life when your knees start to ache a little bit.
Right. You don't want to do the work itself. Yeah. I mean, I've got friends that are both electricians, plumbers. It's not easy. I mean, as they get closer to 60, it's the last thing you want to do is be underneath a sink. But yeah, you could have done better by having that college education. But doesn't make sense to me unless you can afford it to get in the whole $200,000 and you're paying that for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yes.
It's more than your mortgage, or you don't even have a mortgage because you can't afford a house. So you have to move back home with your parents, or you're eating ramen noodles.
Yeah.
You know, the idea, and then why not go to school close and commute? I did that at Suffolk. I mean, you have to live on campus.
Yeah. Well, what that is.
You go forward. But the problem with that is when you get out of college, all of a sudden there's all this debt. What do? You go back and live at home. So it's like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back.
Yeah.
Like what's the point of that? You could have just stayed home and not have all that debt. Well, and maybe then you get an apartment when you graduate college. Yeah. It's supposed to be more linear than sometimes it is.
Yeah. And one thing about that, Seth, that I think that kind of worries me about millennials is that we had, when I was in high school, I had wanderlust. I wanted to get the hell out of the house.
Right.
And the moment I could, I did. And I was gone. I moved from here to California immediately.
See, I never had that. I was always comfortable there. Because, again, I was the youngest, and like I had like the basement apartment. And it was nice. It wasn't a dungeon. It was a really cool place.
Yeah.
And like at that point, there was just my parents and me. They were upstairs, and we'd eat dinner. And, I was out all the time working or drinking or whatever. And, so I never was one of those people that wanted to leave the house.
Yeah. Well, then again, my parents were divorced and things like that, and so maybe it was different.
And they were closer in age to you.
And also, I mean, without being globist, Italian families, a lot of times...
Yep.
My brother was dating somebody from Somerville, and they all lived at home until they got married.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's almost like a
Italian family, I'm saying.
See, my brother, closest to me in age, he's 9 years older, he was out of there at 19.
Yeah.
He just wanted his own. I mean, he was a different person than me, but he already started renting an apartment, bought a house. Like, that's all he wanted to do. He wanted to be on his own. Yeah. And he stayed there. He stayed on his own.
So the other thing I would say to anybody getting into any business is, and this has certainly helped you, is just attitude.
Yeah.
Just have a good attitude. A crap attitude will get you whacked, and people will remember that about you forever. And a good attitude, people remember that as well.
Yeah, I think what you have to do, too, is, and I think it goes back, because we've worked different jobs, both of us, right? You worked at hotels, bars, whatever it may be. Yeah. I've worked in restaurants. Those are tough jobs. If something's on the floor, you don't point to someone to pick it up. You just pick it up yourself. So now that we're in a position like this, where I think, you just do things. It's like I've never, ever said here or anywhere, well, that's not part of my job.
Right.
I'm just kind of, if there's something to be done, I just do it. It's not a big deal. It's,
Yeah.
And I think that's something that gets lost with people, that, it's not my job. If everybody just doesn't do anything, then nothing's going to get done. There comes a point where the water's gushing, and you got to hold it back. You can't say that's not my job, but you got to be able to think quick on your feet. And I think working in a restaurant taught me so much. Owning a restaurant taught me so much.
Incredible.
It's just incredibly difficult work.
Yeah.
It is. It's just nonstop.
Yeah.
I mean, the day would end, and
the profit margin for a restaurant is like tiny.
Yeah.
Too, generally.
I mean, at the end of the week, you pay everything off, and you have whatever's left over for you. But at the end of the day, you're like, oh man, I forgot I didn't buy this, or I didn't order this, and I didn't do this, and now I got to get this ready for tomorrow. We're gonna have enough of this. If someone calls in sick, who's gonna cover it? I mean, it's just constant. I was fortunate, actually. I had great people working for me. A couple older guys that cooked that never called in sick.
That's great.
In fact, they were there were times when they would come in sick. I'd say, go home. You're not helping anybody. But they had great work ethic. So that was great. Same thing. Older people. That's the. I don't think my dad ever called in sick to any job he ever had.
Yeah. No. What I've found as well is that working with guys from Portugal and Guyana and El Salvador and when you work a line level job with people from other countries, they bust their asses
because they have no choice.
Oh yeah, and they're thrilled. If you say that that you can work 104 hours this week, they're
no problem.
Awesome, fantastic,
and more money. Yeah,
yes,
because they don't have those opportunities where they come from.
Right, but some normal kid from Wellesley, you say him you're going to work 80 hours, he's going to tell you how much of a victim he is.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, I went to a barbershop in Winthrop, and the young guy that cut my hair was from El Salvador. He works like 6.5 days a week. Mm-hmm. He loves it. He's there at 9:30 in the morning till 7 at night. He's got people lined up. He goes, I take about a half a day off a week if I need to, and do what I have to. But I love doing this, making money. I'm trying to maybe buy a home. So he's very motivated. Mm-hmm. Whereas he's not looking for the next day off. He knows that the more you work, the more you make. Especially in that type of industry. Obviously, every haircut is whatever amount of money in his pocket. Yeah,
well, it's great to have first of all, that's positive energy, and we need more of that around.
Yeah.
People who are thrilled to be working and thrilled to be producing something and grabbing the American dream, because it is something that's still out there.
It's just our ancestors all came here for a reason.
Yeah.
Yours obviously more, much earlier than mine, but my grandparents all came here at the turn of the century, in the early 1900s, and that's what they wanted. And they put the time in. And I think a lot of the people that are here now have the same motives, but sometimes they get shunned away. But their system, their family life is a lot like, say, the Italians that came here in the 1900s. It's about family, working hard, supporting each other. There's always someone home, grandparents watching the kids or whatever. It's a different dynamic than people that have been here, not now, third generation or fourth generation. You do things a different way, and you kind of frown upon what they do, but that's what our ancestors did.
I love Italians. I do. I love. I mean, there's a lot of people from other countries. There are other countries. A lot of them who are really hospitable, who are just really incredible, and they've been all sorts of different nationalities have been great to me. Generally, when I was working in hotels, but I love the Italians are the best because I was not eating meat for a number of years, Sap. I didn't eat any red meat anyway.
I could last like about a day and a half with that.
I know. I don't know what I was thinking, but anyway. And I went to my brother's girlfriend's house. She's from Somerville, as a matter of fact. And her mother, of course, her mother is there, and her mother insists on feeding me.
Sure.
And I said, no, Mrs. I'll say her name. It was Mrs. Vecchiarello. I said, no, Mrs. Vecchiarello, I don't eat meat. I don't eat meat. And she could care less what I was saying.
Oh,
she said, that's nonsense.
Listen.
It's nonsense. It's nonsense.
Yeah.
Here, you're going to eat this. And she brought me 84 plates of meat.
Right, yeah.
I said, man, this is great. And she's right, too. And what hospitality.
It was like my big fat Greek wedding, remember? No meat? What about lamb? It's like, what do you mean you don't eat meat? It's like they don't understand because the culture is so driven by food.
Yeah.
And being hospitable, and that's just the way, people are raised. And then a lot of you'll notice some Italians, maybe not so much, but so many of the Italians that came here were from Naples south. They're much more hospitable. The ones that came from north of Naples, maybe a little bit more standoffish.
Really?
Yeah, because that country is like this country. The north is different than the south. It's not as big as the United States, but Naples south all the way down to Sicily, the people are just more hospitable. The climate's a little bit better. It's not quite as rich as the north, so it's more of an authentic feel. Whereas the more north you go, it's very Americanized, whether it be Milan, Torino. Rome is somewhere in the middle, is kind of a mishmash of everything. But you'll see that if people come from the north, they're not quite as hospitable as the people in the south.
That is so interesting. Yeah. And the Sicilians have their own thing.
They're very hospitable. Yes,
very
hospitable.
Is it wise to cross them off? Not?
Once you piss them off, they're not very hospitable.
So what will you eat tonight?
Tonight, I don't know. I'm going to probably go back to the Winthrop Arms, where I live, and I
sounds fancy.
It's
gated community.
Not a gated community. It's right on the
water
near
the ocean. You do
the
very
ocean.
well.
Oh yeah. I do great. I live in a hotel room in the back of the kitchen. I I'm like Schneider and one day at a time or something like that. And I don't know how to fix anything. But I understand that they have a meatloaf special tonight. I'm not a huge meatloaf fan, but the time I have it there, it's really good. It's moist.
Meatloaf has come a long way. It's not. I found some really interesting meatloafs in places now.
Yep. My sister used to make meatloaf. She'd use cream of mushroom soup. That would be the base to make it moist.
That's good stuff.
But this meatloaf's good. You get the mashed potatoes, or I'll get a turkey. Just a simple meal, and that'll be it for the night. And I'll watch the NBA All-Star game.
And then another day, and we continue this journey, Sap.
Yes, it is a journey. See another movie tomorrow, so I can say I've seen all 9 Oscar-nominated films, then I can rank them 1 through 9.
There you go. Fulfillment works in all sorts of ways.
Yes.
So, once again, where do they get you on Twitter?
At John Sapp 25, JOHN SAP 25.
That is great. This I appreciate the time.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. I got you here on a weekend, as far as anybody knows, and we'll certainly have to do it again. We'll have to get Sarah Nidis in here and to give the Greek side of this whole thing.
Yes, because we're like brothers from another mother. He's the Greek version of me. Just he's louder.
Yeah, I know. He'll have to stay away from the microphone.
Right.
All right, everybody. You can get me at IShouldHaDidMoreReading.com and on Twitter at IShouldHaDidMoreReading, on Instagram, all that stuff. And we will double our efforts to get more podcasts out. We've screwed up. We've stopped that we were having a weigh-in, Sap. I've gained so much weight in the last month and a half due to beer and pasta.
And the holidays.
Right, I guess, yeah. And the gun to my head, obviously. That
have another cannoli.
I know. I've become just terrible. Although I do feel mentally more sharp the more I'm eating.
More sugar?
No, sharp. The more I'm eating.
No, but the more sugar you have in you, maybe you turn that into brain power?
Maybe.
I'm going to go with that.
Yeah, I'll take it. Anyway, everybody, thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.